Is airing some of his grievances against the president. So this Democratic narrative, how truthful is that? Are middle-class Americans and lower-income Americans actually not getting a tax cut?
No, 91% of the middle class in this country are getting some kind of tax break. I think that Bernie Sanders is just upset that he can no longer write off all three of his houses in this tax bill. And it's clear that unless the left has an enemy, class warfare going on in the name of socialism, they're not going to be happy about any of this. We've heard the argument from him also that, look, corporations got a permanent tax break while individuals did not. Fine, that is actually true. However,
the
reason for that is because you need 60 votes to have permanent individual tax cuts, and the way that you do that is by getting Democrats on board. Bernie Sanders refused to step up. He didn't write his own bill, and here we are with the individual tax rate being temporary. They could vote next year to change it to be permanent.
Healthcare proved to be much more difficult for Republicans than tax reform, and you know that's frustrating for the party. This is, however, a big victory and could have a great economic impact. What would it take for Democrats to acknowledge that tax cuts are in fact good for the economy?
All Democrats or Bernie Sanders? There's definitely a bit of a chasm there.
He speaks for quite a few Democrats.
He does, an increasing amount, which we have discussed. I believe it to be problematic that the party continues to shift to the left when the map keeps lighting up red. At least in 2016 it did, and throughout the course of the Obama years. Bernie Sanders, you're never going to sell on it. I think it's 80% are getting a tax cut of some kind. I wish that they had gone for larger tax cuts on the individual rate and maybe a little bit higher on the corporate side. You know, we may fundamentally disagree whether trickle down works. I don't believe that it does. But we have seen the beginnings of those bonuses, a little wage bump. But this also doesn't come into effect fully until after the midterms. So we won't know how much Americans are going to feel like they're really better off before then. So I think it's a little complicated. Why are you laughing?
No, but I want to ask you about this, David, because
the last statement's ridiculous.
Okay, but
when does the bill come?
But I want to ask you about this because there's a difference between having a tax break throughout 2018, but really not feeling effect until you file your tax return in 2019.
Right.
So how much of it is theoretical and how much of it is actual, and does it matter?
Well, it's all actual in this respect. You make your decisions based on what you have to file for in the following year. If you talk to any accountant, not pundits on the Democrat side, sorry, Jessica, I know I love you, but if you talk to an accountant, you talk to an accounting firm, people are going to make their decisions based on the way they have to file their taxes, much in the way many are going to rush before the end of this year to claim certain deductions where in certain categories they may get a bigger benefit. And when you look at the tax cuts, which do take effect in part in February, and you look at S-Corps, LLPs, LLCs, their decisions are going to be made on quarterly filings and projections next year. So the actual effect is there. The effect on the economy, by the way, and I'm going to use AT&T as the example of all the companies, but there are many others. If you give $1,000 to 200,000 people, that's $200 million you've injected into the economy, whether it goes into a bank or into a Christmas present or into a new pair of hockey skates for the kids or baseball uniform. That is money that is spurring consumer economy. So right away, PNC Bank, Wells Fargo, all these other companies giving bonuses, GoDaddy giving bonuses. That means that those people are going to use that money. That's an injection of consumer activity. That is the economic equation that matters.
Well, and I'd rather see a company like AT&T give some of their employees $1,000 in a bonus check as opposed to the government subsidizing either health care or just handing out cash willy-nilly, because it's very different when the government gives out our money versus a corporation that is trying to use bonuses as a reinvestment.
Big time, Kennedy. I think the only person who used the word trickle down was the Democrat on the panel. Isn't that right? We don't use that word, Jessica.
Why not?
Trickle down. That's it.
It's outdated.
It's a Democrat slur. It always was.
I know some real slurs. That is not the slur.
You guys have been using it since I was in high school, Jessica. Or not you. You're much younger than me, Jessica.
I am.
Look,
I'm a millennial baby.
And she
Bernie
doesn't like
Sanders,
Bernie, which is amazing.
Well, look, Bernie Sanders admitted. I saw him with Jake Tapper.
Yeah,
he took the 91. Yes, he said 91%, and Bernie said yes, it does. But they expire. They expire. He kept saying they expire. Well, then just
but then never
re-up
telling
it.
you why, to Katie's earlier point. point. If the Democrats, who have cried for years that they want to lower taxes on the lower rungs of the income ladder in America, whatever they want to call them, poor, middle class, or otherwise, well, here's a case where they could have voted for lowering those tax rates. So
well,
I'm sorry,
maybe the
Democrats are
that were available to us would not have meshed with our ideology. There was Republicans were so set on lowering.
But economics is not ideology.
There are plenty of Nobel Prize winners on the economic side who are
the same
Democrats
ones that are
and
doing the
liberals.
global warming analysis.
Oh, I'm sorry, but you don't believe in science. But the idea that you are opposed to the government spending our money, what I believe that this corporate tax rate does is basically saying that corporations are better equipped to tell us what to do with our money because they're deciding what will eventually trickle down.
What they do. They get to decide what they do with their own money instead of the government.
But you're
forcing
saying
them
it's going
to do something with
you're
their
say
money.
That
is the American dream. That you start a business. If your business makes money, you get to decide what you do with your money. That is the American dream.
Here's another difference.
For years, and wages have not gone up.
That's because there's
wages
been
actually
so much,
are increasing.
But this is why we have not seen wages go up, why we haven't seen corporations hiring. Now that we are. There's been so much regulation, federal regulation in this country over the past 8 years, which President Trump has taken off the table. 22 regulations repealed for everyone that is put on the books. That has been a wet blanket over the economy for nearly a decade. It's proven in the GDP numbers. We've seen it when you talk to small businesses and corporations about why they're not hiring. And it's because of an unstable environment, whether it's Obamacare, new federal regulations. Those things all cost an enormous amount of money, and corporations aren't going to sit back.
That's absolutely right. It's
It costs money, exactly.
And those are barriers to entry, and those are the things that keep people
barriers
from starting
to hiring.
businesses and growing businesses because they just don't have the capital because they are so
But here's another aspect of this.
What's wrong with corporations making money? I want to know that. What is wrong with that?
But I'm also in favor of middle and lower class Americans making a good wage. And no, they're not. If Obama was president, you would say that the wages weren't going up high enough.
Because they didn't.
They were stagnant.
But suddenly, in the last 11 months, we've had a eureka moment, and the economy functions
wages have increased, Jessica.
Corporate CEOs have made it perfectly clear that they will not be paying higher wages from this. Gary Cohn said at a meeting of them,
he was in a room with people and certain people didn't raise their hand. That's your data? An informal poll in a room of people versus actual
What's your data
numbers?
that 5 or 6 companies gave these bonuses right now, $1,000, that you think it's all going to be fixed?
The fact that consumer confidence is up, GDP growth is up, the stock market is up, wages are up, unemployment is down.
Obama years too.
That's data.
Actually, if you look at more data in the economic equation on this, something that's important in America is the measure of home buyers. The home mortgage interest, they did a survey of this. Interest in home mortgages is at an 18-year high. It's a spike that's happened since the beginning of this year. There's something else. You use the term trickle down. Trickle down once was a bad phrase for the Republicans to use. It's actually downward pressure from the economy in what the economic activity levels are created by corporations and wealthier individuals, investors, or otherwise in the society. It's also the upward pressure when you lift wages, when you lift tax burden, regulatory burden on the lower income scale, when you have over 80% of the people, according to the IRS data, paying, and they make under $50,000 a year, paying the Obamacare tax penalty, and you lift that from them, that matters to them. Suddenly $1,000 to a person making $40,000 as a percentage of their earnings and their taxable income becomes great. Last part of this, you double the standard deductions. Single parent, or couple.
Well,
and now you release their money for them to use.
Okay,
plus release and
speaking of doubling, Rosie O'Donnell is doubling down on her Twitter war. She went after Ben Shapiro last week, telling him something so filthy I can't repeat it on a family show.
Rosie said something filthy?
Yeah, and she's been busy tweeting out to Paul Ryan when Paul Ryan released a lovely Christmas message expressing his faith and hope. Rosie tweeted, "Paul Ryan, don't talk about Jesus after what you just did to our nation. You will go straight to hell. You screwed up, fake altar boy. Hashtag Judas much."
Wow. Tom, no reaction to that.
Come on. She put everything in there. Yeah, Rosie, she probably shouldn't tweet. She's not taking advantage of the new expanded Twitter either. Her tweets are still quite
compressed.
They're very short. You know, President Trump, he's doing the what is it now, 280?
280 characters.
It goes on forever.
He's filling them out now. I think she's
Do I really want to read a novelette every time I read something?
I'm with you on that. They gave it to me. I've rarely ever used it. I don't need 280 characters in a manifesto. By the way, Rosie's tweets.
I'd take it as a bowling score, though.
Okay, that's a good point. But Rosie's tweets are about as short as her basic intelligence. I mean, it doesn't exist. I remember. No, look. This is a woman who doesn't do the work. She had a show at Sirius. It lasted a few months. Why? I looked at it and said she doesn't do the work. So if she doesn't do the work, she doesn't have the understanding. She's like Chelsea Handler. She's a wannabe
and she's also,
who never will be and could never be a has-been.
She's a bomb thrower who's just trying to get a little bit of attention and get the attention of the press and the president. I understand that she's probably quite bored because she has been relieved of her duties from several employers.
This seems unbelievably mean to be only talking about Rosie O'Donnell and kind of she's not a hard worker.
Well,
she can't keep a
Did you
job.
read what she said to Ben Shapiro?
Oh, yeah, and I've read what kind of things are said to Rosie O'Donnell, what the President of the United States of America has said about Rosie O'Donnell. Didn't he call her a fat pig?
Did you read what she wrote to Ben Shapiro?
I don't think any of it is
saying that
appropriate,
because I can't repeat it.
But deal with her ideas. I mean, just going to say she loves
It's hard to do what she proposed on Twitter recently.
Her ideas are a little
Ben Shapiro
lacking.
do something that a man and a woman on their honeymoon.
Okay, I would judge Rosie O'Donnell by her ideas if she were actually espousing concrete academic database ideas, but instead she's going off about religion, which leftists don't seem to do until it's convenient for them, and accusing Paul Ryan of and saying he's going to go to hell. I mean, that's who made Rosie O'Donnell God. I don't think we all scared of that. Was really the case.
I thought that was Hillary Clinton.
Remember when she desperately wanted to dress up as Steve Bannon for SNL? And they're like,
no, thanks. I don't think so.
No, we're really okay.
We're good.
Thanks,
We don't
Rosie.
need
Why
you.
don't you go lock it up? So are we going to see any improved discourse? Because Jessica's right about something. It's pretty nasty
you.
from
Yeah.
both sides.
No,
I like it.
we're not.
You like it?
Unfortunately,
Down low, it's just where I want it.
we're
Let's you
not
take the
going
high
to
road?
see any
Yeah.
improvement. I hate to say it, and look, you don't have to engage in it. I choose not to engage in it.
Yeah.
I find
Did you hear what
sarcasm.
you just said about Rosie O'Donnell?
because
You don't engage in it?
Okay, actually, factually, I know that she's lazy and doesn't do the work because I used to be in the same
What's
company
wrong with
with her.
that?
That's fact. And her show died
She's
because of
saying
it.
Sounds
horrible
like
things
Bernie
to people.
Sanders.
No, but here's the thing. I can
disagree
say
with
what
that.
I know
Bernie
about
Sanders,
her.
there is some merit to what he says for communists
I was
and
talking
about
about the
socialists.
working part of
No, but I think Bernie actually
Bernie
is
Sanders.
an authentic person who has a heart and he operates with the best
He
intentions.
truly believes what he's
Right.
saying.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Socialism and communism operated with the best intentions, and we won't even go into the data on how many died and suffered
100 million.
under socialism and communism. Look,
Katie
as
just
far
said
as
that one, right?
I have a T-shirt. I
that's
actually
why
have
I
a
have
T-shirt that
Katie.
says communism killed 100 million people, and all I got was this lousy T-shirt.
Yeah, but to the rhetoric, I wish the rhetoric would get better on policy, but unfortunately, Twitter and social media today and the environment is heavily polarized. You know, if you want to use something, I use sarcasm. Maybe you can throw in a couple facts. You can actually tweet.
Is that an app?
Suffice to say, Ben Shapiro will not be taking Rosie up on her offer.
Right after A.
She blocked him. He won the argument. She blocked him. He went to Twitter and complained because it was sexual harassment.
It was.
But it didn't violate.
Imagine what that was.
Until
Well, it didn't
Twitter
violate-
changed their mind, which they finally did.
They did. They
and they
deleted the
deleted the tweet.
All right, she went down in flames in her last election, but Hillary Clinton reportedly thinks she could provide help to Democrats in 2018. We shall dive into that one head first in moments. Stay with us.
For election next year, the last person I'd want out campaigning for me would be Hillary Clinton. She's political kryptonite. But there are reports, though, the failed 2016 presidential candidate may be considering a role in the midterms to help her party retake Congress. It certainly would be great for Republicans, her favorability hitting a new low last week. So, Jessica, I'm going to boot this over to you.
Shocking that you would go
Right.
to me
We're going to you
first.
first.
Really, I don't know what gave me away, but I should go.
Should Hillary Clinton be anywhere near any kind of congressional race going into 2018?
Oh, absolutely, depending on where the race is. Like, if I were running for a New York City seat, that'd be fantastic to have her. California's hugely popular on the coast. If you want to take her to Chicago, that would work
But
as
those
well.
are all cities a Democrat couldn't lose.
Well, no, there are
Where
some
can she go in a-
races.
Strategically,
Where can she
sure.
go in a contestable race and win?
There are races, certainly out in California, like Darrell Issa's seat, for instance. I mean, there are a lot of vulnerable Republicans who are in districts that Hillary Clinton won in 2016. She's one of the most prolific fundraisers in political.
We know that.
How about for other
And
people?
her PAC, by the way, her PAC has donated a lot of money to the redistricting effort, you know, which feels unfair if you're a Republican or an independent in a place like California. And I don't disagree with you. I think she could be a big help in certain places locally if there were no microphones and no media, because donors do want to get close to her. There still is a lot of intrigue. People who are loyalists feel that she has been wronged and she's been attacked by the press and political opponents who are still ongoing. But having said that, if you put a camera there, all anyone is going to do is make fun of her because A, she won't go away, and B, she's not looking toward the future.
But that's not
what is her fantastic 5-point economic plan?
Right.
Her plan is to talk about victimhood, why she lost, to blame everyone and not take responsibility. And for Democrats, that doesn't move the ball forward.
Do you want me?
Sure, you can respond. Go for it.
Suddenly everyone's super quiet during this block. They're eating popcorn.
We're just going to be observers.
Yes.
Any hoodles. No, I do take your points, and I think the national media will certainly blow that up, and it'll be on all the cable news networks. But I think that it will matter. There are 65 million people in this country did vote for her. The chance to meet her, to go to a rally where she's speaking, to hear about her life of public service. And you can make jokes about it, no economic plan, whatever it is.
Yeah.
But, you know.
Hashtag.
David, I have a question about Republicans, though. Should Republicans move forward in 2018 based on being for something rather than being against Hillary Clinton? Because there is a risk there of Republicans holding on to Hillary Clinton as a punching bag, even if she deserves it.
Yeah, look, Hillary
and not
Clinton,
actually touting the accomplishments that they've had over the past year. To win
look, Republicans sell success. The best thing you can sell to the person sitting at their kitchen table is success. Your tax policy, regulatory burden. You're doing all these things. EPA's working better with the states. They're rolling back federal government overlordship in your lives. They're giving you a chance to do what you want, find your talent, go to school, whatever. Run on success. As for Hillary Clinton, look, everything you mentioned, with all due respect, are
Remember,
areas,
you'd like nicer rhetoric before you continue that sentence.
Yeah.
Everything you mentioned, it's realistic rhetoric, is our districts where Democrats could win. Hillary Clinton's problem isn't so much whether there's media or not, as I see it. It's the fact that she is a terrible spokesperson for other people. She's a bad enough spokesperson for herself. Yeah. She couldn't sell herself.
Unrelatable.
But in an election where she got 65 million votes, the fact is there was no other choice because they had crushed the other choice and pushed him out of the race.
On that note of is she a good representation of the Democrat Party, right? We've seen both sides of the political aisle trying to move away from old leadership. There's constantly this fight against the establishment. If Democrats happen to win back the House, which is unlikely at this point, who is their new leadership? Are they really going to keep Nancy Pelosi around?
Oh, that's a good question.
I mean, who is going to actually be in charge here?
Well, she's not going away. That's the thing. You know, lock her up. That was a Republican slogan, lock her up. But the Democrats, I think, want to start chanting lock her up. They want her under house arrest.
Yeah.
They don't want her around. But I'm about America to concede to Jessica Tarlov. You are right. She could help people win seats. Yeah. And not in just safe districts. Certain areas, you know, she could come in and she could get an election, but at the cost of the national party, because President Trump, he already likes to trot her. Every time he does a rally, he talks most of the time about Hillary Clinton.
Let's stop
She's
talking
massively
about
unpopular.
Hillary Clinton.
I would
all it
Hillary
takes
Clinton.
is one misstep for her and one misstatement, and people are going to exploit that. And the loudest chorus of people asking for her to go away, it's been from fellow Democrats.
Yeah,
I mean, they really want to move on. And if you've heard the change in tone, Republicans are the ones begging her to stay because she's pulling the party down with her favorability.
But Jessica, I have a question about turnout, though, because right now the resistance actually does have some momentum in terms of getting voters to turn out. But if Hillary Clinton comes into the picture in districts like Darrell Issa's, doesn't that pose a risk of getting people who voted for Trump or even people who just really don't like Hillary Clinton actually out there at a time when Democrats have the advantage on turnout?
I'm not sure if you're really picking your battles here. And we have leadership on both sides that's hugely unpopular. You have a president at 35% approval, Republicans not popular, Democrats not popular. So I would, you know, caution anyone where you send Paul Ryan, where you send Nancy Pelosi, Hillary Clinton, any of them. I mean, we have really unpopular figureheads generally. So that isn't a risk for me. There's also, which we're not talking about, the potential for her to be more of a behind-the-scenes player where she is having all these hoity-toity fundraisers.
I don't
think her book tour is over. I think think that the last thing Hillary Clinton wants to do now is to hurt the party any further than she already feels like she did.
But we're going to move on.
We'll
Back
just
to
leave
the
that one
state
on the
that likes
table.
Hillary Clinton. California escalating its showdown with the Trump administration over illegal immigration. Next.
17 for the president, but he's still getting plenty of pushback on his immigration agenda. Liberal California Jerry Brown, the governor, can you imagine that, continuing to defy President Trump and granting holiday pardons to 2 foreigners who are on the verge of being deported for committing crimes while in the United States. Meanwhile, Pope Francis, no shocker there, appears to have even taken on the president, highlighting the struggles of refugees in his Christmas Mass and urging Christians to embrace immigrants, all while living behind the walled Vatican. I find that interesting, Kennedy. I got to throw that to you. I got a legal question for Katie Pavlich.
Yeah.
But, you know, you talk about the opposition, Jerry Brown, the Pope, all of them highlighting the plight of others, but they live safely in their walls and they're behind their gates and their staffs and their protection.
I'm not going to attack the Pope, but I will say about Jerry Brown, I think there are certain cities and certain law enforcement agencies who protect the wrong people at the wrong time. I actually don't disagree with the 2 people that Jerry Brown pardoned because these were crimes that either happened a while ago, both of them went to prison, they both served their time, they both showed that they were rehabilitated and did their best to redeem themselves and live a better life. And I think that this time of year, we should honor that redemption and we should honor that hard work. And I get uncomfortable when we paint all immigrants with a broad brush. And actually,
well, I paint them as legal or illegal, Katie, and that is simply it. Now, it's a federal law when it comes to immigration, the responsibility of the federal government, a violation of federal law to be here illegally. So I'm a little confused, and maybe we need a judge on this, but Jerry Brown pardoned.
First, it's important to point out that these 2 men came here legally. They were brought here legally into the country as children. However, I don't understand the legal aspect of how Jerry Brown can pardon a deportation order when that is a federal issue, not a state issue. He can pardon state-level crimes. Now, here's my problem with this. There are a lot of American citizens who, you know, weren't brought here from another country who probably needed pardon pretty badly as well. I think they probably should take precedent. The other thing that bothers me is that Jerry Brown is constantly talking about gun control and California being the #1 state that has the best laws and the rest of the country should emulate them. One of the men he pardoned was convicted on a felony weapons charge with a gang enhancement. And so it doesn't, you know, if you're going to pardon people who violate gun laws and yet lecture the rest of the country about theirs, I have a problem with that. Barack Obama did the same thing. So are pardons something that are used in this country for redemption?
They're
Absolutely.
always used
Is this a good time of year to do it?
There's
yes.
no doubt
However,
about that. But if someone serves their time and has not committed crimes since they left prison, isn't that what we want from people? Isn't that part of the point of the prison system?
So whether there are choices or not, I agree.
I want people who are hardworking,
agree.
good people to come to this country and make this country even
Right.
better. That's what I want from
Gun
immigration.
enhancement laws and charges and prosecutions are not done easily by courts.
They are in California.
And prosecutors. Jessica, is this just politics, really? I mean, he could have. How many people are probably in the California prison system that could have, you know, maybe deserved a
Is there a
pardon?
limit on the number of pardons that he can grant?
No, it's only how much time he has to do it. And I think that he did want to send a statement before the holidays to President Trump to say, I am not interested in your perspective or your views on how we should deal with the illegal immigrant population in this country. And truthfully, what he did, to Kennedy's point about how prison is supposed to be used as a rehabilitation mechanism, and it was in this case, and the drug enhancement charge was from 1995. He hasn't done anything since then, is in line with the American people. While the American people, the gun charge, sorry. While people do want to see increased border safety and stuff like that, they don't want the 11 million that are here already to be deported. Yeah. And that's what President Trump has threatened, and that's what you're talking about.
Do you think Jerry Brown should pardon Kate Steinle's murderer? After all, he's still under some charges.
Well, he's committed crimes. He's offended 6 times over.
I was shocked that he was acquitted of the crimes.
Right. Well, that's California juries for you in San Francisco. Justice. Go ahead, Tom.
Well, you make a good point bringing up that case, but I think to wrap it all together, I do agree with you, Kennedy. You have to fight certain battles, and I think you don't want to fight the right of a governor to pardon people. That's something that is going to happen, and we don't want to mess with that. Yeah. The battle to fight is on sanctuary cities and other things like that. Cities that are defying national immigration law. That's where we fight the battle, not over these individual guys who may be sympathetic.
But there's also a big difference between someone who has committed a felony recently, who is not, when ICE is not informed that this person is being held, who is ready for deportation, who has committed some sort of a violent crime. Those are the people that this pushback against sanctuary cities is meant to.
But the criminal aspect of this is the parallel here, right? So even though these men who were convicted, served their time in the state prison system in California, didn't commit a crime since. The parallel is that they were brought into this country, were given everything by America, and they still decided to break the law in a very violent way. Now, you fast forward to today, and Americans have put up for 2 decades, 3 decades of that, and they've had it. They've had it with allowing people to come in and to violate the laws in their communities that are violent against the people.
What about people who violate laws who were born here?
That's a fair point. However, but the difference is people feel like now they've been putting up with illegal immigration, and there never being a line between legal and illegal immigration, that they've had to deal with illegal immigrants getting a pass for so long. They want someone to be held accountable.
Don't you think that's specifically why Jerry Brown picked 2 people who offended so long ago?
I don't know why I don't know why he
No, but he could have. He didn't go and pardon Kate Steinle's murderer. He didn't pick people who had been violent within the last few years. He picked people where really their main crime, at least in the eyes of immigration hardliners, is that they crossed into this country illegally in the first place. And that's the argument about those 11 million.
Then we have to change the laws to allow certain people to come into this country who are good people who want to work hard. That system is broken, and that's something that Congress is incapable of addressing.
Look, the Democrats, when they had the chance, didn't do a thing about immigration with that. They
did Obamacare.
Neither did Republicans, but finally we have a president who is apparently going to visit the wall, or the new, versions. The prototypes. Go down there, see what they are, and start building them. All right, so if you didn't get a Maserati, I don't know, I'm a Mercedes.